Hi, my name is Juan, and welcome to The Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things. Please remember that we are therapists, but we are not your therapists, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only. Right now, at the time of this episode, it is 9:41 in the morning. It is a Wednesday. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is today's episode's about how to help your child navigate a divorce, which is such a hard topic, right? And it's a difficult topic for everyone often in the family, outside the family. It's such a challenging topic because I think at times it's not what was predicted, and because it wasn't something that was predicted, right? Because these two people formed a life. And more than likely, early on, they did not predict that divorce would take place. It's difficult to plan for what we do not predict, or what we're not expecting. Maybe a better choice of word there. As we jump into this topic, I want to encourage you to hold sensitivity for it, hold space for it, because really we're not discussing a ripping of a Band-Aid. We're not discussing a sprint, a topic that starts here and ends here. Helping your child as a proactive, as a parent that holds integrity, that holds leadership values. It's knowing that this is going to be a lifestyle. This is going to be an ongoing process of supporting your child through a divorce. And there's aspects, of course, that are going to be really intensified in the beginning, and others down the road that may have lower intensity. So before we get started, I want to share with you a little bit of background. I thought this was a really good topic because at Santos Counseling here at Greensboro Counseling Practice, we do a lot of family therapy. We work with a lot of individuals. And when we work with families, sometimes it is about helping the family transition into the space of separation. Sometimes we work with individuals, and it could be a 12-year-old, and their parents are getting divorced. And now this 12-year-old was really active in sports and maybe enjoying certain aspects of life. But now they feel this sense of guilt, like they did something wrong. They're blaming themselves for the divorce. And it just goes on and on, really, the examples. And I share them to bring awareness, to say, hey, this is happening. And as a parent, you have such a pivotal position as a parent, a pivotal position to be there for your child, to support your child with this process. So first, I'm going to mention, I do not think I'm going to mention working with a counselor in strong words is extremely helpful. It brings this unbiased person in there. If it's individual for your child, it's where they get to go in and talk about maybe some of the aspects that they're not comfortable sharing with their parents for X or Y reason. If it's parents, maybe individually you work with a counselor to help you with that healing process. I remember working with this individual, and what happens is when we're married, we build an identity, right? Hey, I am this person's spouse, right? You even communicate in that way, so it really highlights your identity. And then you go through a separation, and you're like, what the F? How do I get into this new space of life? And there's not, training, but working with a counselor gives you that space of knowing here's how we can do that in a healthy, supportive, constructive way. And there's so many other ways you could utilize counseling. So let's start today's conversation with the area of respect. I think that's a really important one. And it's important to know that your kids are going through, and this episode is focused on helping your child with separation, right? With that divorce. So let's focus on them, and it's knowing that your child is going to show a lot of emotion. They're going to maybe show aggression, show frustration. They're going to maybe want to keep emotions to themselves. So you may see them on a nonverbal way where they're isolating or withdrawing. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is imagine you have like this blanket. And that's what you're going to do. You're just going to wrap a blanket around them. Or you're going to put a blanket down and say, let's sit here. And a blanket represents comfort. I'm here to support you. So with that, a couple of strategies you can utilize as a parent, and one of them is creating that space of openness. So let's say an example of this: if my child, and when we're going through a separation, and my child is really just being withdrawn, quiet, and it's different, right? It's different than what we were doing in the past. So I may go up to my child and say, hey, I just want to let you know what I'm saying. And I want to let you know that I am 100% okay talking about this, whether with me or we can go see a counselor, and we can do it there. But I do want to let you know because I love you and I care about you. And I could be wrong on this, but I'm going to let you know what I see. I am seeing that a couple of weeks ago, you were out of your room playing outside a lot. And then now you're in your room a lot. And I just want to talk about why and maybe what you're noticing about it. So what I'm doing as a parent is I'm not being judgmental, right? And I'm being curious. I'm letting my child teach me what they're going through. I'm respecting their emotions because I'm trying to understand them. And that's really different than you need to get out of your room. You need to get over it. You need to stop whining. You need to stop complaining, right? There's that judgment. And sometimes as parents, we jump to that because we think that it's help, right? We want to just get them to go from A to B. We want them to feel better as soon as possible. And we know in our journey of adulthood that it's not always that way, right? Sometimes we carry a feeling for more than 60 seconds. We may carry a feeling for several weeks. Doesn't sit the entire time, but it's there. And what we value is when someone shows respect for that feeling. Now, here's another item that comes up a lot with working with kids and divorce, and it's internalization, right? Kids often internalize. They go, well, what did I do wrong? Right? Are my parents separated because I did something wrong? I shouldn't have yelled that day. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have done that. And as parents, we want to think about that. We want to think about how easy it is sometimes for guilt to take place, for blaming oneself. And really, it's not just kids that do this. I find all of us do this, all the way from a child to an adult. We find situations and then we blame ourselves. And it's hard to step out of that, right? It's hard to step out of that. So this is where, as a parent, you could really step in and bring attention to the needed conversations. Now, bring attention to the needed conversations means that as a parent, you can talk about what's happening. So if I sat down with my child, I could say, hey, you don't have to say anything, but if you want to talk, we can talk all day long. I am 100% open to that. I want to let you know what's happening. Your mom and I, right, or blank and I, we respect each other. We love each other. And sometimes things happen. And what I mean by things is sometimes people decide to stay in the same house and continue to live together and be married. And then other times they go, I think we get along a lot better if we're in different places. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be in different places. Now, just be mindful in this podcast. I am shaving a lot of items on this conversation. What I'm really giving you is that aspect of I want my child to know something of what's happening. And I want them to be as far away from possible from guilt, from blaming themselves. And it's through those disclosures. And often with parents, the question I get is, how much do I say? Right? Especially with the age of a child. A 5-year-old is very different than a 15-year-old, which is a great question. Right? That's where working with a counselor, here's what it does is it allows you to understand how to communicate. And here's the end part. It then gives you a secondary space after the conversation. So if I sit down with my 5-year-old and I talk about this, I want the secondary part. And the secondary part is, what is my 5-year-old going to do with that information? Where can they go and feel safe to continue to open up that door and to explore it? We as adults, we get tough news, right? A job loss. And, we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. We're up there in our years. We've more than likely had a lot of different experiences that have trained us or given us tools to manage and regulate certain difficulties in life. Whereas our 5-year-old or our 10-year-old, even our 15-year-old, they are going to be more than likely less equipped with that. So giving your child that therapeutic space of a counselor to go further into, all right, now you've had this conversation with your parent. That counselor can dig into, well, what do you think about it? How do you feel about it? And they can do some bibliotherapy, which a simple way to look at that is they can pull out certain books. And they can do puppet work, which goes into like play therapy, something that we do at Santos Counseling. So that's really neat. And just to give you a very simple version of it, it's where maybe your child has these characters, and it could be the characters from Inside Out, and they're connecting to, here's what this person's going through, here's what this person's going through. But what they're doing is they're learning about the feelings inside of them. They're learning what they are, and they're learning what to do about them. Often when we don't learn those things, we tuck them away, and then it comes out, right? It comes out through maybe aggression. It comes out to anger. It comes out in some sort of other way, which leads to a secondary problem, of course. I want to now spend some time going into like just bullet points, right? Bullet points of separation. Here's some things to keep in mind. Number one, and there's such a deeper conversation here, really. There is the lens of your child, and that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about if your child has a pair of glasses and that's how they see life, you put those glasses on, and I want you to imagine, how do they see parents treating each other, right? As this separation, divorce is ongoing, how do they see the parents separating each other? Now, I completely understand we don't control, right? You can only control yourself, and that's all we're looking at here. You can only control yourself, right? So these are the aspects that you want to look at. And the bullet point that I want to mention is reminding your child that both parents care about one another, right? That's an important aspect. And then if we dig a little bit further in that, it's being very mindful during this separation divorce process, the language that you use about the other parent and the rules that you have in your home about the other parent. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that there's a separation taking place, and your child doesn't feel comfortable at home with parent A talking about what happens in parent B, right? Maybe because you just don't want to hear that person's name, et cetera, et cetera. There could be lots of reasons. Now, let's really go into, how is that a risk, right? Well, the risk in that is it builds secrecy. That's one, and we know that's right. That's a negative space to get into. Risk number two, they don't feel safe with you, with parent A, to talk about other aspects of their life, right? If their life is a puzzle and it's got 5 pieces, and they're spending time in that one puzzle piece with parent B, and they're not sharing that life of a puzzle piece of B with you, they're learning that they can do that with you, that they can build a relationship with you and keep things away from you. So you're only going to see a certain side of them. That's going to create distance. That's going to create disconnect, right? And if you pull that out and just think about it in a very black and white example, and you build a relationship with someone, you have the question: should you have secrets in that relationship? Right? The yes is going to tell you something, and the no is going to tell you something. And I think you hold that competence in listening to this to know which direction to go into. Now, once again, it's not an easy process, but it's one where you're putting on those glasses and you're looking at life from that point of view of the child, right? And that's those really difficult items of parenting that, we don't know way early on that there is that challenge, right? Taking care of ourselves and then figuring out how to manage this area of parenthood. The other aspect is, the next bullet point here is avoid blaming, avoid negatively speaking about the other parent in front of the child, right? You want to think about what's the leadership in there, right? What are you teaching that child in that moment? Examples of that would be parent A says, well, they're lazy, they never do anything, they don't even care about you, right? You're kind of thinking, well, what is a minor, right, under 18, based on their years of life experience? What are they going to do with that information? Do they have the competence, the emotional regulation, the understanding, etc., to actually process that? And more than likely, no. So then what it does is it separates, right? It creates further distance from you and the child. And then that makes it a little bit harder to build those bonds that we need in a secure, attached relationship. Next bullet point here is maintain routines. Kids, when they go through a separation, things change, right? It's a backpack for each house. I remember working with this child for a while. And one of the things that they did was they got really attached to their bag, and they kept this bag with them everywhere they went, from one home to the other. They wouldn't let anybody touch it. And then we worked together for a while, and at some point they shared with me, they said, this is the one thing, right? And what they were sharing in there was, this is consistent, right? The other 2 spaces are not consistent. I'm jumping from one to the other. So and you can kind of see the pain in that, right? You can hear the pain in that. You can understand that level of empathy needed to understand what this child is living. Now, looking at parenting and helping your child through separation and divorce, strongly encourage maintaining routines. What routine does the child have now? Now, granted, it's nearly impossible to maintain it 100%. Completely get that. But to some degree, maintaining that there, and it will require both from both ends. The other part here, next bullet point to look at is, and this one I think is just tough in general in life, not really solely on separation or divorce. It is working as a parent to listen much more. Listen with your eyes. I get that could be a little odd. Listen with your ears. Listen with your heart, with your soul. Pick up on what behaviors your child's doing. How are they moving through the house? Head up, head down, shoulders up, or broad. Same group of friends, different group of friends. So that's an important one. As you dig in there too, you're looking at letting them know that it's okay. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel stuck. It's okay to feel anxious. And the list goes on, right? What you're doing as a parent is you're letting them know, hey, this is hard. This is tough. This is not, an easy process. And when they get to see that in you, to say, hey, it's okay for me to be sad that I miss my dad at night before I'm going to bed, because for the last 5 years, I would see him before I go to bed. So now that's just different. That's weird. It's hard. And they have you as parent B to say, that's okay to feel that. I'm not, I understand. I understand your pain. And then you could look at, of course, methods in there. What I see some parents do is they communicate with each other, right? So one parent will say, hey, I'm noticing that, Jim is really getting anxious at night. I think he was so used to you coming home right after work and y'all had that routine you did. What can we do there, right? So then that parent goes, you know what? I can do some FaceTime. Right before bed, I'll do a FaceTime, and then we'll jump on maybe this book, and we'll see how that goes. So if you notice, you're developing as co-parents, you're developing this methodology, this strategy to help your child see divorce and separation as a secure space. And I wanted to leave that at the very end, just to say that word, secure space, because often it's not said when it comes to the separation or divorce. Often we think about two parents in a house, they're married, and the child feels secure in that. And what I think is missing from that is the details, because you can have two parents in a house and it could be very chaotic. And the child can grow up and, be 20 something years old and say, man, I wish they would have separated. Growing up with them two was terrible. And there's many examples of that. So I think that brings clarity that a two-person household is not always a space of security. Now let's go back. Right, you're supporting your child with a divorce separation process, and what makes this challenging, and this we can just say over and over and over. One of the most challenging components of separation and divorce is the parental relationship. Right, if these two people have a hard time getting along, communicating effectively, and all those skills that we look for, it really just filters down into the child and makes it makes it a little bit harder to address some of these objectives or goals. Now, I will share, and I've seen this many, many times, and it's where parents separate and they create a new puzzle, right? They separate, they communicate effectively, the child's aware, the routines, all those things stay very similar, and there's a security in there. And really what's happening, it's almost like the child, and I'll speak with kids, and they use certain language that I find so neat, beautiful, interesting. And it's things like, yes, my parents get along. They're funny. They hang out. If I have my sports events, both my parents are there. And my step parents are there. Well, yeah, sometimes my parent will be there with my step parent. Right? And really what they're telling me is that there's a blend. Right, and the blend makes sense. It's like one of those times where you try to make a smoothie and you add a bunch of stuff to it, and you're like, "Damn, this is good." Right, the blend here makes sense. So let's wrap this up here. As we finish off, and you're looking at supporting your child, right? Being that leader for them. You notice I talked about a lot of things. I talked about the importance of going to go see a counselor. For yourself as a parent, see a counselor. Your divorce, separation, that is an extremely difficult transition. Can be. So working with someone, it's a beautiful investment in yourself to allow that process to just be a little smoother, or heck, a lot smoother. Look at family counseling to help in that blended space. Look at co-parenting. As long as you both can, come in and constructively, effectively execute and do the work, that could be really helpful. Give your child an individual space. And really, I strongly encourage parents early on, don't wait until there's something wrong. Plug your child in with a therapist early on. You're going to find that there's something in there they're going to be talking about. There's many individuals that I've worked with in my life, minors, kids, and the parents will come in for that reason. Yeah, everything's great. I just wanted to plug this in now so that in case things pop up later, they already know you and they have a good relationship with you. They're not going to tell us everything, right? We know that. And that exact thing happened. The method was extremely effective. They brought their child in. Things were great. There were still items to work on, like we could work on executive thinking, time management, prioritization, other leadership skills, and so forth. And then later, whenever they would have certain aspects in life really hit them hard, we already had that relationship, right? We didn't have to start from ground zero. So the last item I mentioned that I wanted to leave you with is you parent. Take care of you. You remember that little scene of like you're on an airplane and then it's crashing and you're thinking about who should I take care of, right? I think it's who do you put the mask on first? You got to put it on you. And I'll share with you, as a parent, sometimes I don't do that. So sometimes I do not do that. I put myself second, third, fourth. But I'm here speaking to you, so I get to tell you, put your mask on first. And maybe this will be a nice reminder for me to put my mask on first. I appreciate everyone listening. If Santos Counseling can be of help to you, please know that our doors are open. We're here to support. We are here to walk with you. If you have anybody in your circle, work friend that you think could benefit from this podcast, send them a link. Tell them to give it a listen. I'll see you in the next episode.